Hey, it looks like we're live. My name is Manny Wolf. I am, among other things, your cranky marketing uncle. I'm the founder of the Client Creation Method, and I am a veteran of 10 years in the internet marketing, coaching, social media client acquisition, and all related spaces. And I want to give you 10 years of what I've learned in about 10 minutes. So this shouldn't take long, but it will be immensely valuable, with the one caveat that you need to be ready to hear this, because the reason that you struggle, if you're here watching this, the odds are that you have not yet figured out how to reliably just solve your client acquisition problems. Or maybe you just like my style, my handsome face. I don't know. But for the most part, you're still looking for answers because you still recognize that you have problems. I'm going to give you first the setup, and here it is. When I came into this industry, even though I had studied marketing in college, I didn't think I would be a marketer. I never did. I thought I was going to be a men's coach. And so I wrote a book, my life story, and embedded in my life story were life lessons and all this stuff. And as soon as I started coming into the space, I started to realize that all the promises were empty. All the glittering, gleaming sort of $1 million in 5 weeks or whatever it is, the kind of hype and the bullshit I'm talking about here. As I started to realize there was very little substance behind all this stuff, I started to get frustrated. I started to get mad. And when I get mad and I get frustrated, one of two things happens. I either do something that earns me a felony, which I try to stay away from anymore, or I really start to solve the problem. The older I get, the more I want to solve problems and not have felonies. So, first step, come into the space, look around, think that I found some sort of utopia, only to realize it's all hype and marketing glitz and glamour and promises and things like that. Second step, I got really frustrated. So I started really tinkering with what is this? How do we get clients? That's just been my guiding question for a decade. How do we get clients? Now, as I did this, I started to document it, just share it. And that was really more of a therapy thing for me and a venting thing for me. But regardless, people started to pay attention and I started to get pretty good at it. Fast forward to now, I have seen behind the scenes of at least a dozen very expensive, very well-marketed so-called solutions for coaches and experts who want to solve their lead gen and client acquisition problems. I've been in $50,000 masterminds. I've paid $10,000 for a program, just all the horror stories that you hear. And I got very little out of those, very, very little. In many cases, nothing. And so I kept figuring it out myself. Now, the more I figured out, the more I ranted and raved and complained and criticized the bullshit in the industry, right? And now most people know me as a guy who calls it out. And so I want to call it out for you now. There are a lot of ways that you can solve your client acquisition problems. Some of them are what we call organic, which means you have to put in time and human capital. And some of them are paid, which means you got to put in money. Now, one thing I've learned is even when you put in money, you should never abdicate, and you should never confuse delegation with abdication. What do I mean by that? Don't just send somebody your money and think your problems are solved. God, if you can't see how that's problematic, you may not belong in this industry. You may belong in some sort of a padded cell somewhere. It's so fucking obviously not the thing to do, right? Don't just hand somebody a check and think it's over. You got to stay in the game. Okay. Now, I just got done saying that there are lots of ways you can do this. And so what am I talking about here? Well, I'm talking about you can do webinars. You can do organic. You can do joint ventures. You can use email. You can use Instagram. You can use Facebook. You can use LinkedIn. When people say, this thing is dead, do this instead, you got to know right away They have a vested interest in having you believe that, because nothing is dead. Nothing. It all still works. You can literally use door hangers or bulletin board flyers and get clients. Now, is it going to be as easy as something else? That's not for me to say, right? And if we could agree on one thing, it would be that we've all seen people make something work. You know what I mean by that? In other words, there's somebody out there doing every single thing and getting clients with it and being successful with it. And so what happens is when you've sort of fallen for enough things and you've evaluated after the fact enough times, you start to realize maybe it's me. Or if most of the direct response style marketers out there have their way with you, you'll never realize that it's you. You'll think you need the next program, the next course, the next this, the next that. When really the fact of the matter is getting clients is not that hard. But it's simple, but not easy. Let's put it that way. And so you've got to be aware of what you're doing, what you're thinking, what choices you're making. You have to get into this stuff, guys and girls and non-binaries and whoever you are. Anyone watching this, you've got to turn the mirror on yourself at a certain point. And you've got to look at, like, what is it about you that's making you keep falling for this shit? And then you got to stop whatever that is, right? I don't know if you've heard this idea before or not, but business and entrepreneurship are the hardest things there are to do because they bring you face to face with your shortcomings. And most people, even those who claim they're entrepreneurs, even those who say they want this kind of success, are just not willing to go through that process of becoming the person who is capable of generating the results that you claim you want. You see, it's easy to go on social media and make posts that say, my mission in life is to impact 1 million people. It's probably not. It's probably a thing that you kind of want, right? Or that you like the sound of your own voice as you say it. So stripping away all that noise and ego and hubris for a minute, let me break down for you, as promised, what 10 years in this game has taught me. And I've got a convenient little drawing to explain it to you. Now, I'm sure you can all see this. And this is, you could think of this as a ticker tape line on a stock or on the economy, the GDP line, right? This is the ticker tape line on a stock or the GDP or whatever. And you know, the GDP always trends up and to the right. Does it crash down sometimes? Of course it does. Does it skyrocket other times? Of course it does. But over time, it always goes up and to the right. And by the way, this is borrowed from a guy named Steve Werner, who showed me this way of thinking of it, which is, to my mind, this is just absolute gold. And so here we go. Steve was a trader for 20 years on the floor of the stock exchange, I think in Chicago or whatever. But the point is, he understands things from the point of view of a stock trader. And we were talking, and he showed me this example. And he says, do you know what we, in the stock exchange, what we call this top line? This line that is traces the highs of the up and down. This is called resistance. It's not called the ceiling. It's called resistance. And it's called resistance because when everybody gets all excited and puts their money in and the stock goes up and up and up, it's going to hit this line where the more timid elements are just not able to hold. And so they bail. They take their money and run. Well, that leads us to a downward trend, a temporary downward trend. And then this one down here, which I thought was called the floor, is actually called support. So at the bottom, you have support. And you'll notice, again, it trends up and to the right. And on the top, you have resistance. This is a way of thinking about the behavior that happens in between, in the short run, as things are going good in the long run. And so why is that important to you? And how does this relate to me just saying that nothing is dead and that you shouldn't trust people who try to tell you this or that thing is dead? It's just a marketing angle, guys. See, this is the same thing that applies. There we go. Okay, everything's backwards as I look at it on the screen. So this is the same thing that applies to you in whatever your marketing efforts are. And so this whole contained line here that has static and chaos inside it, but always trends up and to the right, could be thought of as your model of how you're doing your marketing, right? And if the model is trustable, if it's reliable, then do you know what they call all this stuff in the middle? All those ups and downs that happen maybe by the minute or the hour or the day? It's called noise. It's just noise. And so your job is not, this is what I've learned, by the way, in 10, 11 minutes now. It's probably going to be 13 before this is done. But your job is not to run and try a new thing every time things don't work instantaneously. If the model works, your job is to trust the model and keep doing what you need to do to support the model. This is it. This is 10 years of experience all accumulated and synthesized into this very short video. Now, why do I say this? Because I've been the one who ran back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and tried every single thing. You don't need to try every single thing. You need to have the discipline, the self-confidence, the judiciousness to say, does the model work? And if so, you stay the course and you make incremental and strategic moves to grow. So, how could I wrap all this up into a very, very succinct lesson? As promised, it would be this: stop running from thing to thing. If you're going to be an organic marketing person to get your clients, then stick to it and get better at it. You can pull clients every month right off of your Facebook profile, your LinkedIn profile, your Instagram profile, your Twitter X profile. Like, you can do it. You just have to get better at it. Resist the nervous urge to jump to something new, which has its own learning curve, just because the thing that you've committed to initially doesn't seem to be working in the short run. And so in the crypto game, some of you guys will be familiar with that. They had this term, HODL, HODL. HODL came about when somebody misspelled the word hold, and it just sort of stuck. But hold means hold, like don't move, don't panic, don't flinch. The stock dipped, hold. It'll go back up again. Maybe not in crypto, right? But do you see what I'm saying? Like, you've got to, if you want any kind of success in your coaching and business, you've got to have some resilience and some ability to weather the short-term turbulence as long as your model works. You trust the model and stick with it. That's 10 years right there. God, I hope this helps you guys, because, you know, in addition to doing this to make a living, for whatever reason, I got a soft spot in my heart for all of you coaches out there and you course creators and you experts. And I know what you're going through, being bombarded with different messages and conflicting messages every day. Stick to one and continue until it works for you. That's 10 years in 14 minutes and 20 seconds. And with that, I wish you well, and I'm out for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one.